I'll ask you all to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Felice, would you lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Just a reminder, the emergency exit locations, please take note of the exit in the back of the room and the door you came in through. In case of an emergency, please leave in an orderly fashion through these exits. This is a smoke-free and vape-free school district. Smoking is not permitted in the building or anywhere on school grounds. This is also a hate-free and bully-free school district. Moving on to item C, board consent agenda.
The administration recommends the approval of board consent items reflected in Schedule C1 and C2.
C1 and 2, can I have a motion? Ms. Felice?
I have a, well, I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion,
but then
can I have a second? Mr. Lillo, discussion?
Yes, discussion. The item number 2, the treasurer's report, that was sent to us just today, very, very late, okay? Just that's a 55 or 59 page document. I've made these requests before that this document come to us much earlier. This, where's Ms. Segee? I can't see Ms. Segee. Ms.
Well, let's
Segee,
just keep these to the superintendent, right?
okay, no, just want to thank her for the ruler that she gave me to read that document, okay? This is the treasurer's report. We're going through a very intense budget report tonight. And the January report is our halfway report for the budget tonight. So I would like to request we either table this report, or I mean, it's not going to change the report. The report is going to be the report. Everything in it I'm going to be in approval of the report. But because I like to go through each and every item in that report to be certain of what's in it, to watch the lines, to make sure we're where we need to be with the budget that we're about to hear tonight. I can't do that because, you see the way I'm dressed tonight? I had a fundraiser for my Lions Club. Normally I prep for this meeting all day on Wednesday. So when these late reports come through, I have time to read them. I didn't have time to do that today. I prepped yesterday. You and I had a long conversation yesterday about the questions I had about this agenda. Couldn't do that with the late report, especially with the treasurer's report. So.
Okay, so going forward, let's just try to put it in place that if we have multiple page documents that need to be for the board, they're not. They've got to come at least.
They can't come that late.
They can't come the week of. They've got to come at least by Friday before a board meeting, so there's ample time for the board to read it. Is that something I think we should be able to accomplish? I mean, there's nothing time sensitive, right?
No, not at all.
Okay. Okay, that should work going forward?
It should work, and I'd respectfully like to table that report for this meeting.
Is there anything time
And
sensitive
see it
to
at the
that
next-
treasurer's report that
No.
prevents us from doing that? Okay, does
So we
anybody
do
have
an
any?
amendment to the motion?
Yeah, correct, just want to make sure the board agrees to pulling this item.
Sure.
All right, so we need a motion to amend the motion, or does Ms. Felice have to recall a motion?
You can amend.
Okay, would you like to make a motion to amend your motion, Ms. Felice? To remove item 2?
Why don't I withdraw my motion, and we'll make a motion to approve the minutes,
Okay, so the
and we'll
motion,
table the treasurer's report.
So it's gotta be in
I just want to look to council to make sure we're doing that right. It is, and does the seconder have to, or just Ms. Felice, it's
So there'll have
done?
to be a second now as well,
On the new motion.
And a vote on,
on the new motion.
okay, so can I have a motion to withdraw the motion, or is Ms. Felice making the motion? She's making a motion to withdraw a
I can
motion.
make, sure.
Correct.
I can make the
Is there a
motion.
second? Mr. Little, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion is withdrawn. Now we'll ask for a motion for item 1.
So,
That's you.
yep, so the administration recommends approval of board consent items reflected in Schedule C1.
Can I have a motion? Mr. Little, seconded by Ms. Felice. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. You're up.
relatively short superintendent's report, so I'll get right to it. Last week I had the privilege of attending our high school's winter concert, our second winter concert featuring our amazing jazz ensemble, conducted by Angelina Wasson, our mixed chorus and concert orchestra that performed together. There's quite a number of students on stage, which is pretty fantastic. That was conducted jointly by Mr. Henry Finnegan, Juliet Valenti, and Cynthia Holden, and our wind ensemble, which also performed under the direction of Angelina Wasson. Again, watching these sort of groups perform is always sort of impressive. So big shout out to our entire music staff. And again, I'll say it each time, always impressed by the sheer number of students who participate in our music program. Moving on with some more happenings, I had the privilege of reading to students at Kramer Street Elementary School. One of the highlights of that interaction were the students kind of boasting about their math scores as soon as I walked in the room and showed me their data. But I got to read a book called Poppy Has a Motorcycle, about a father who takes his daughter on a motorcycle ride around their old town. And the book was about change, and the kids got the theme right away because certain stores that used to be there weren't there. And one of the third graders said, the theme of the book is that even though things may look different, the feelings are the same, which is really insightful by a third grader. So a great time reading to them. Frank P. Long kind of set me up for their read-along book. It was called The Book with No Pictures, which is very suspect. But the book had no pictures because it made the reader do and say really silly things, much to the enjoyment of the students. So I was making weird sounds and saying really silly things about myself. And they enjoyed it so much so that they made me read it twice. Also, we participated in a parade of champions at Belport High School, celebrating our girls' varsity wrestling team and Cameron Howard, who won the individual state championship. At our next board meeting, we'll have more of an update of some of the accolades that our student athlete achieved in our winter sports season, including indoor track that we haven't spoken about yet. So big shout out to our student athletes and our coaches. I also engaged in my first classroom visitation for Civics Capstone Project in preparation for our Civics Day that's happening later in April, or May actually, at Belport Middle School. These students in Ms. Williams' class were advocating for a study center for students at the middle school that is separate and aside from the study center that exists for student athletes. So I thought it was a great proposal. They had some great questions for me and had a great time in the class. And I also want to highlight that this next week, on March 25th, Belport Middle School is hosting a curriculum fair from 5 to 6 p.m. In the gym through the auditorium entrance, where you get to see some of the highlights of some of the things going on at the middle school. There'll be staff and students participating, as well as a little musical performance by our South Country singers. So if you can make it out, please stop by our curriculum fair at 5 o'clock on March 25th. Outside of the district, I had the opportunity to go to the REFIT breakfast. REFIT stands for Reform, Educational, Finance, and Equities Today. This was hosted by Dr. Sammy Gerges, who used to work here in our business office. But the point of the breakfast is a lot of our elected officials and legislators are present to receive some questions that were facilitated by Dr. Gerges. Questions included questions on foundation aid and our foundation aid formula. One of the things that we sort of advocate for is a restructuring of that aid formula and sort of the weight that certain students are assigned, like our special education students or our English language learners. Civil service reform, a lot of us are frustrated by civil service in terms of our ability to hire employees and the length or the amount of time it takes to do so. Our universal pre-K aid, right now it's capped at $5,400 per student. This figure, I think, was developed in the early 2000s, so it's really antiquated, so we're really advocating for that amount to be raised. Federal title program funding, we had some questions about some of the uncertainty of title funds. Health insurance costs, which seem to be skyrocketing across the board, and the impact that charter schools are having on public schools. So in all, it was a productive morning, an informative morning, and happy to have attended it. I also had a wonderful time at a Women's History event at Belport Middle School, where some dignitaries from the Suffolk County Police were invited, which included Ms. Elizabeth Dates, who's our Assistant Commissioner, Detective Sergeant April Hargrove, Deputy Police Commissioner Belinda Alvarez Groman, our Latino Liaison, Officer Jasmine Gallant, and our Police Chief, or Suffolk County Police Chief, Milagros Soto. They did a really great presentation. I really enjoyed just not the fact, first and foremost, we're so supportive of law enforcement, so it's great to see these law enforcement dignitaries here addressing our 8th grade students. The fact that they're all women was really remarkable and impressive to me, just because I think they serve as amazing role models for our students, boys and girls. And they also represented such a diverse group of people. So I thought it was a win-win-win. And I want to thank Dr. Blasek again for lending a hand and making this happen for our middle school. It really was an incredible event. And again, please follow us on social media. All of these snapshots are just from Instagram pages from various schools and organizations. There is a lot going on in our school district. All this stuff is just from the past week. And there are different ways to follow us. One is our community portal, which you can subscribe to on our homepage. Our social media links are all posted on our homepage, as well as the Superintendent's Corner, my contact information, my social media feeds, and my weekly update. And just as a little point of reference, we're hoping to launch our new website July 1st. So I'm really excited about that. So be on the lookout for a more formal announcement. That concludes my report. Thank you for your commitment.
Thank you. Okay, trustee and advisory committee reports. Laura, I'm gonna start with you.
So in March, we're continuing with our Spirit Month. So this Friday, we have anything but a backpack. Next Friday is Hawaiian Day, and then the day before is Class Color Day, because Thursday, March 27th, we have Class Olympics, so everyone's super excited for that. We're really looking forward to it. Next Friday, we leave for our conference in Albany, so thank you, we're also looking forward to that. We're pairing up with Key Club, so Student Council and Key Club, we're going upstate to Albany to partake in this conference. Looking to April, we have the academic competition, so it's something like Jeopardy, in which the seniors and juniors and then sophomores and freshmen compete against each other with questions about Bellport and other relevant facts. And we are also collecting warmer clothes for our spring clothing drive. Also with spring sports started on Monday, and we're also super excited for that. The warm weather has been very nice. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Liz?
Thank you. Yes, congratulations to Ms. LaGrega. She scored in the top 10 of her class, so congratulations
Thank
to
you.
you and all the other students that are with you. And enjoyed Women's History Month. Thank you again, Dr. Blasek, for such a wonderful presentation. I think it was exceptional this year. The kids were really engaged. I think they really did enjoy the presentation. And it was also nice to reminisce with one of my former union members who I represented when I was president of the Suffolk County Association of Municipal Employees, back when she was not a police officer and she was a probation aide, Sergeant Hargrove. So it's nice to see how we all progress over the years and where we end up. So it was a nice event. Thank you once again. That's it.
Great. Mr. Lowell?
I just want to piggyback kind of on how great our music staff is. Last Friday, at 1 o'clock, there was a scramble to get SCMEA rehearsals. They were supposed to be at West Hampton Beach. Unfortunately, they had a scare. So the high school administration, as well as the music department, was able to set the rehearsals at our high school, which was great. Those kids, the next night was the concert, which was, if you have a chance to go see a SCMEA concert, you should. The music is fantastic. And it's great to see our district so represented with Ms. Wasson being the president of SCMEA. Also want to give shout out to the high school for the junior prom. That was also last Friday night. My daughter went, she had a great time, and I just want to say thank you.
Ms. Cameron?
Nothing, Mr. Puccini, thank you.
Hayes?
I attended a meeting of Compass Unity, and was not glad to hear about some of the things that they were reporting on, because it has to do with like cannabis-laced gummies and snack packages that look like Fritos and things like that, and apparently there's a rash of this going on in our community or the surrounding area, and I'm glad to know, I didn't know about it, but I think it's something that we ought to know about, and we ought to let parents know about if they're not aware of this going on. I went to the winter concert, I went to the first one and also the second one, thoroughly enjoyed it. attended a policy committee meeting yesterday, and we're plotting our way through some policies and weeding out ones that are not absolutely essential and trying to combine things to make it a little easier and more functional. Thoroughly enjoyed the Women's History event with women in law enforcement at the middle school. And I attended the policy committee, which was the very first one that was chaired by our new assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. And she had it structured so that the main part of it was a discussion of delivery of different classes and all of that. And the discussion was so vibrant, we didn't have time for it. So I don't know how that can be rectified next time, but it was very worthwhile, and glad to have been a part of that.
That was the equity committee. You had said policy committee, equity committee.
Yeah, equity.
Yep.
You
Yeah,
said
policy, the policy I only made one comment about,
Right.
which was trying to streamline things and get it easier to work with. With regard to equity, that's what our assistant superintendent, she had an agenda, and the meaty part of the agenda was very vibrant, but I felt like we could have gone on more for that.
Anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Barron?
Nothing to report beyond what's been already reported.
Got it. And I have a couple of quick things. So I had a Nassau Suffolk School Board meeting last week. There were a couple of things that came out. One of the things I don't think I realized was next year is the 250th anniversary of our country.
Yeah.
1776.
Yes, so there is, I know, the county executive has put together a committee of leaders throughout the county to, it sounds like Suffolk County is planning, plenty of celebrations next year for this, and there's a committee on it, and there is some discussion as to how are we linking schools to these celebrations, and what are we doing and things like that. So I don't think there's anything right now other than, we should probably be thinking about it internally and seeing what there is and opportunities to connect with this county committee to explore how we can tag along and what they might even be offering for schools, for students by way of programs and maybe there's field trips, I don't really know. I do know that Bob Vecchio from Nassau Suffolk School Board is on that committee, so he will be a bridge to the school community, so we will probably hear more. So really more of an FYI at this point. Another topic of conversation was the new regulation, I think, that goes into effect next year, which is the student school board member. That officially goes into effect July 1, correct?
Yep.
Obviously, we don't have that issue because we've had one for a number of years. I think we're one of the only districts on Long Island that has had it for as long. But the question that did come up, because I offered, to let the room know, we've had one for years. Anybody has questions, you'll let me know. It's been a great experience for us. But somebody asked a question and it made me think, does our student board member and how we handle it conform to the state regulations? And I don't think we're doing anything wrong, but there is more to it, I think, within the regulation, and I'm not really familiar with it, but there are instances where the student board member will participate in discussions, although not executive session, but there will be opportunity to solicit more than just what's happening in school and to be around and to hear things, but there is more in-depth involvement from the student board member in this new law. So we should probably take a look at that and see how things may need to change going forward and prepare our student board members for that, et cetera.
So we actually brought that up in our policy committee meeting because we're actually, when we meet again, we're gonna look at our policy regarding the ex officio and make sure that we're, in sort of aligned with what the expectations from the state are.
Got it.
But it came up in our policy meeting.
Got it. I'm glad you mentioned SCMEA because we were applauded in the room by a number of districts for our ability to quickly transition during the fire and move rehearsals here to South Country. There are a lot of music families in there. One of our music teachers' mom is the NISBA representative, so she's very involved in the music community, and the praise was heaped upon our district quite a bit at that meeting. So thank you to everybody who did do that, put that together, and was able to pull that off. It really made us look great, and that's a wonderful thing, especially at a scary time. And it was interesting because another part of that in relation to the fires was there's a number of board members from Eastern Suffolk BOCES on the Nassau School Board, and they discovered they have a building at the West Hampton Airport, and they were evacuated, and the building they were evacuated to was evacuated, and they didn't have a plan. So it highlighted, you know, some significant flaws in what they thought was a sound emergency plan that they never had to really enact since '95, right? I don't even know if they had the building back then. So it did get me thinking of, you know, how often are we auditing our protocols and certain securities and things like that? And it's something that, to the Health and Safety Committee, if they're not already on their radar, should probably start brushing up on some of those things to just see what has changed, whether it's technology, whatever it is. There's probably things that change, so it was a good opportunity to refresh that and have that conversation.
So ironically, Mr. Galina, who's here today, brought this topic up to me today, so he's already engaged in some
Great
research.
minds, pal, great minds.
Mr. Huntsman also, we tested our RAVE app at Kramer Elementary School. That's the, you know, app that we have in case there is an emergency.
Yep.
So we've been on it. But yeah, ironically, because of the there were bomb threats at West Hampton. That's what sort of necessitated there to cancel the rehearsal. And so, yeah, Mr. Galina's on it.
Oh, is that right? Was the rehearsal not canceled because of the fires?
No, the fires
Oh,
were
it was the bomb
Saturday.
threat? Okay, it was the same week. Because it is interesting, because that bomb threat issue, that was 3 schools, I think,
Right.
that received the bomb threat, and I know they arrested the student. But it was interesting you bring that up, because I got texts from my kids about it in our high school, so it circulated pretty quick. Okay, so good, so glad. All right, so
And the credit also goes to students to make it happen. It was the admin, obviously the music staff, but also there were student volunteers that helped make this whole thing happen Friday night. Literally something that takes weeks to plan, they were able to deliver it in an afternoon. So credit to them.
The only other piece that came out that I thought was worth mentioning, and as we go through the budgets, and I think it was last week where we talked about transportation and the significant increase in transportation costs. I was a little bit surprised at how many districts are struggling with the exact same issue. Around the room, it was anywhere from $1.5 million to $3 million, that about half of the districts anticipated an increased transportation cost because their contracts are up. And there seems to be, somebody said I wouldn't say it, there seems to be plenty of collusion amongst transportation companies. Every district that I have spoken to, and it's a handful that have gone out for RFPs for busing, only had one district respond, one bus company respond, and it was their current provider. That is, in my opinion, clear evidence of collusion. So, and that's difficult. Any district has either $2 million increase to any budget line, it's gonna be difficult to manage. So, so it seems to be a problem across the island, not just us. And I think that's all I have. Okay? Moving on. Do we have any cards? No. Okay, you're up.
All right.
All right.
So today, we're going to be doing our 5th budget presentation, which is a staffing analysis. We're not going to be going over revenue numbers or expenditure numbers. We're going to be talking about staffing. And I want to preface this by saying that this is probably one of the more difficult presentations I've had to make because, as President Puccini alluded to, there have been sort of unexpected and unanticipated rises or increases in operating costs that are taking multiple school districts by surprise. But in looking at our timeline, here we are, March 19th, our staffing analysis. On April 2nd, we'll provide an expenses and revenues update to see where we're at. Again, this budget process is ongoing and will culminate in our budget adaptation, which means when we present our final budget on April 20th. May 7th is our budget hearing, which is our last meeting that we discussed the budget in public, aside from any budget roadshows I may engage in. And our budget vote and election will be on May 20th. Again, right now, we're in the process. We're not in April yet, but we've done our staffing analysis all throughout March. We're in the process of now really looking at our expenditures and revenues and trying to see exactly, to make sure we're just doing and scouring every little line item that we can scour just to see if we can find some savings in expenditures, and also trying to develop ways we can perhaps increase revenue. So here are the considerations we made when we go into like staffing analysis in normal times. First, we want to make sure that academic achievement as well as social and emotional needs are being met and supported in any given programs in our schools. We want to ensure compliance with special education and state education department regulations and mandates. We want to maintain our academic and extracurricular activities to the greatest extent possible, always. We also have to respond to the district's declining enrollment in a responsive manner, which means whenever we respond to declining enrollment, we want to make sure we're responsive to the needs of our students and our programs. I know this image is somewhat small, but just in the last school year, the school district has lost about 111 students when we look at the bottom line enrollment numbers. At the same time, our number of classified students and English language learners have gone up. Due to unexpected and significant increases in operating costs, as I alluded to before, our financial challenges require staff reductions that align with our declining enrollment. So what I mean by this is we had a long-term plan of reducing staff through attrition. What that means is as people retire, we absorb those retirements and sort of level the playing field, because we've been able to sort of enjoy small class sizes and maintaining different types of supports in our schools. But this plan, which was a gradual and long-term plan, has really been sort of accelerated to a short-term and immediate strategy because of the urgency of our situation. And I kind of want to talk about what the situation is first before we go over our staffing numbers. First, I put together this 10-year comparison to show how our operating costs have skyrocketed over the last 10 years in just these sort of line items. When you look at our English language learners and the services we provide to them as compared to 2014 numbers, our costs have gone up by over $2 million. And currently, this figure was taken probably in February. We were at 17, almost 18% of our population are English language learners. We're hitting the 20% mark in March. So even though our enrollment is declining, our enrollment of English language learners is increasing. We've had about a 3% increase in special education students in terms of just percentages of overall population, but that 3% represents almost a $2.4 million increase in expenditures associated with special education. Cybersecurity wasn't such a sort of a thing in 2014. Those expenses have gone up by almost $3.4 million. Our insurance has gone up by about $3.3 million, not counting the increase of almost 15% that we're anticipating for the next school year. That's insurance. Mental health costs have been somewhat steady. We've had a pretty robust mental health program over the last 10 years. Physical security includes technology, security staff. That's been an increase of about $700,000. BOCES is another big ticket item. We're using BOCES to a greater extent, and obviously their operating costs go up. That represents an additional $3 million. And transportation, we've seen an increase of almost $3 million over the last 10 years, not including what we're anticipating for the next school year. And other operational costs are just maintenance of the buildings. Since we haven't had a bond project and buildings are starting to need repair, those costs to repair them are increasing on an annual basis. But despite a decline of almost 600 students over the last 10 years, our operating costs in just these areas have gone up by $22 million. More immediately, in talking about this coming school year, what we anticipated was that we're going to have sort of a deficit for 3 years. This current year is the first year of the deficit, and this is because of the disparity between the building aid we're receiving and our debt payments. So we're able to navigate these disparities by strategic use of our reserves. For this upcoming school year, that's 25-26, we anticipated a deficit of about $1.3 million. And when we got the governor's initial budget proposal, that deficit was in the numbers of about $1.2 million. So we were pretty accurate in our projections. What we did not anticipate was these line items and the exorbitant amount of money that they increased, or the cost increased. You're looking at special education alone, we're looking at almost a 6.5% increase in special education costs. Transportation is the most monumental at almost a 16% increase. This includes about a 9% contractual increase, and the fact that we're using a lot more minibuses for our special education students, which add to the cost. But this is almost a $2 million or $1.6 million increase we did not anticipate. And really the big one was health insurance with the 15% bump that we're receiving. That represents an almost 15%, what's 14.52% increase, but about $2.8 million. That's a little over $5 million increased operating costs that we didn't anticipate. So these projected increases are not inclusive of standard increases such as salary increments, standard operating costs, and other expenditures. And to give the board just a little context, we typically plan for a 3 to 5% increase in these costs when we anticipate our projected budget. We certainly didn't anticipate double-digit numbers. And unfortunately, this is forcing us to make some really difficult staffing decisions because at a certain point, which is now, we have to sort of eliminate staff to sort of meet the declining enrollment. And I say this kind of with a heavy heart because I appreciate the impact it has on teachers, on the community, on staff morale. We're not alone in this. It doesn't make me feel any better. Currently, we're part of, I'm just going to stick to healthcare. We're part of a 3-district consortium that has a fully funded healthcare system. That's a 3-village school district, Smithtown School District. We're all in the same boat because of the rising healthcare costs in addition to transportation costs. I spoke to the superintendent in 3-village just today. They're looking to lay off about 31 teachers, a handful of administrators, clerical staff, security staff. Smithtown is up to 42 teachers they're laying off. And the same is happening in districts across Long Island, as President Piccini alluded to. Again, our hope was to sort of do this long-term, because we do appreciate our teachers. But yeah, it's basically the situation of the crisis has sort of forced our hand. So we have to do a really deep dive into staffing. So at this point, he's only been here about a year, but I'm going to introduce Jason Huntsman. He's going to go over the staffing analysis in more specificity than I can, because I'm losing my powers of speech. So I'll have Mr. Huntsman take over from this point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santana. Good evening to the Board of Education, to our South Country School District at large. I appreciate the opportunity to present here our staffing projections for the 2025-2026 school year. What I wanted to do tonight is just to kind of start talking about the language of how we think about it and how we look at staffing, and it really comes down to the language of what we call FTE, or full-time equivalent. And a full-time equivalent is another acronym for a full-time employee. And the FTE, or full-time equivalency, is really based on the number 1, or often you'll hear it read as 1.0 as a full-time staff member. And at times we do have FTEs that can be denoted as decimals. So for example, if we are talking about a 0.5 FTE, that would be an employee that works half of the time that a typical full-time employee would work. And again, a 0.2 would be somebody that represents that works at 20% of a typical full-time employee. Just as we do our staffing allocation and budget, from time to time, we do have some teachers that are either part-time or that are split amongst the buildings. And so, you know, some of our staff, we may have somebody who's a 0.5 FTE at the middle school and also a 0.5 FTE at the high school. But we look at the sum of what they are, and this person in this example would be a 1.0 FTE because their sum of FTE allocation would be a 1.0. From time to time also too, as we do our staffing projections, we will have some teachers that are split by department. So we may have a teacher that's a 0.4 E&L teacher and also a 0.6 English language teacher for this example. And again, that person would be designated as a 1.0 full-time employee. The only other kind of definitions that I wanted to start with this evening is when we talk about FTE, we talk about full year classes on the secondary that meet every single day. That would be considered a 0.2 FTE. And then our courses that are either running every other day or courses that run for half a year, that would be a 0.1 FTE allocation. As we go through our presentation this evening, we're really going to look through five lenses and 5 areas of focus in regards to our staffing. First being central office, and obviously central office is kind of charged with the operation of the entire district. Annotated there, I won't read that portion of the slide, but you can see what Central office is responsible for, and the staff members that are associated with those roles. We'll also be looking at our administration and support, and this will include both our district and building administrators that are charged with carrying out the functions of the school district and their associated responsibilities within their specific titles. The third facet we'll be looking at our elementary schools and all the associated staffing related there. Our elementary staffing and schools will be looking at kindergarten through 5th grade, and also our pre-K center. We'll be looking at all of our teachers, support staff, mental health professionals, guidance, and other instructional coaches. And similar to that, we'll be looking through the same lens for our secondary, but for secondary, we'll be looking at grades 6 through 12. And our final piece of the puzzle that we'll be looking at tonight is our non-instructional staff. And that includes both district and building staff that ranges from our teaching assistants to our safety officers, nurses, maintenance, clerical, and other support staff that would be categorized as our non-instructional staff. So to start us out, our first lens that we're going to talk about, I mentioned, was our central office. And for next year, we do not have any projected changes to our current staff. Currently, we have 13.5 FTE that are allocated under this umbrella. And at this point, that's what we anticipate for our 25-26 school year, with no changes in that area. Up next is our administration and our support personnel. So it's a rather large table. I'm not going to go through each one, but I do want to kind of highlight a couple of key areas. First of all, that first highlighted number 8, just want to point out that there has been a reduction in our middle school enrollment of almost 200 students if you look back over the last 10 years. And currently, we do have a middle school assistant principal position that is unfilled. And our plan at this time is to absorb that position for the 25-26 school year. Additionally, South Country has been committed to our dual language and restorative practice programs. And despite our reduction to the coordinator positions that are annotated there with the highlighted yellow zeros, the focus for next year will be on supporting these programs through professional learning that will be done throughout the 25-26 school year. Just to define that a little bit, both of those positions are what we call TOSAs. TOSAs are teachers on special assignment, and so when we collapse a position like that, or we choose not to staff that, those teachers that are currently in those TOSA roles would go back into their whatever area of teaching that they would be. So if they're an English teacher and they're a TOSA, they would go back into an English teaching position. All right, so let's start talking about our elementary staffing. So first up is our South Haven Early Childhood Center. This obviously is primarily managed through our YMCA, and it's funded through the UPK grant. At this time, there's no projected staffing changes to our current staffing. We anticipate that looking very similar to what we have for this current year. The next 3 slides I want to talk about our elementary, kindergarten through 3rd grade buildings. And first up is our Brookhaven Elementary School. As I start here, I do want to kind of highlight a couple pieces on these next 3 slides because they're kind of laid out in a very similar format. Across the top, looking at enrollment, we do have general education, dual language, and integrated across the top. We also, another key facet of this that I'm sure people are interested in is that center area there is average class size. You can see our average class size currently compared to where we anticipate being for the following year on the bottom portion of the table. For all of our K3 buildings, obviously we're going to have a focus, and there'll be one number that kind of stands out. If you look at our kindergarten number, that number always looks a little bit odd, only because if you look at the average class size there, it's 7. But that's based on our current enrollment. That obviously will continue to grow throughout the rest of the spring and into the summer. And for Brookhaven, we do anticipate still running 6 sections of kindergarten next year, which is aligned to what we have in our current staffing. However, due to enrollment, we do anticipate a reduction of a section of grade 2, highlighted there in yellow on the left-hand side. And we also anticipate 2 reductions on the special ed side, one being in our special class. If you can see on the right-hand side there under the special class, currently we have 2 sections of 3rd grade special class. Next year, based on our students and their IEP needs, we are only anticipating requiring 1 special class. So generally on this slide, you're looking at a 1.0 reduction for elementary FTE and a 2.0 reduction for special education. And again, this is just one building. We'll also talk about this kind of more globally, looking at the entire elementary model. Next up is Kramer. So Kramer, there's not too many pieces that I want to highlight here. I will highlight two pieces. Number one, again, that kindergarten is highlighted. That's for two reasons. Number one, we still don't know what our final enrollment will be, but we do anticipate a reduction in FTE at the kindergarten level. Currently, we have 4 sections of kindergarten at Kramer. We do anticipate having 3 for next year. That's obviously something that we'll monitor, and if there is a tremendous increase, that's something we can adjust, but at this time, we do anticipate that being 3 sections. The only other thing that I wanted to highlight from this slide is that all the way to the right, our special class, we will continue to have 5 sections of special class at Kramer. However, it's going to look a little bit different, and what I mean by that is we plan on adding, based on student need, an 813 special class program at Kramer, and we plan on then moving one of our 1214 programs over to Vern Kritz. So speaking of Vern Kritz, transition there. Speaking of Vern Kritz, again, looking at our kindergarten sections, that's always a place to look, but at this point, we still anticipate having 3 sections of kindergarten. Again, we'll monitor that throughout the spring. Due to enrollment, we do anticipate reducing a section in grade 1 and also a section in grade 3. So that would be a reduction of 2.0 from the elementary FTE. The other thing I wanted to highlight for Vern Kritz is the 5 on the right-hand side. So currently, we have 4 special classes. If you look right above that, this year we're anticipating 5 because that's that one section of the 1214 that we would be bringing over from Kramer. All right, so that concludes our K3. So now moving on to our intermediate building. So our intermediate building, there's not as much movement here. The one thing I will annotate is looking at our grade 4, we currently have 3 sections of integrated. If you look at our current staffing, we plan on moving one of those sections down to 5th grade. So we plan on having a total of 12 sections in 4th grade and 12 sections in 5th grade, which makes sense considering that our enrollment projections are pretty similar there. So there's no adjustment. It's a flat move, but just a reallocation from a 4th grade to a 5th grade position. We do have an increased need based on, again, IEP decisions that is going to indicate that we're going to need an additional special class at Frank P. Long. So that's why we do have an increase from 4 to 5 special classes. So that would be an increase over 1.0 on the special ed side. So I know that was a lot, and doing it kind of by building, it's kind of difficult to keep track of. So this is a little bit more of a summary for where we are right now, looking at our staffing projections for our core and special education. So across our K5, we do anticipate a reduction of 4.0 FTE from the elementary side. And at this point, our special ed number looks like it's going to be flat because we're going to have an increase of 1.0 on the special class and a reduction of 1.0 on the integrated side. So that special ed number looks like it's going to be flat as of right now. The only other facet for our elementary staffing that we need to consider are our other areas of instruction. This is a rather large table because it does encompass a lot of information. A lot of our staffing is going to remain static in our buildings. I will highlight a couple of key areas here. So again, based on some section reductions, we are looking to reduce 1.0 in the area of library media specialist. So instead of Kramer and Vern Kritz each having 1.0, we're going to reduce that and give them a split, again, based on the total number of sections that they have. And also a similar type of reduction between those two same buildings. We're going from having 1.5 or 1.5 FTE of math specialists to 1. So that would be an additional 1.0 math specialist FTE reduction. Again, the only other piece on here that I wanted to highlight is looking at our E&L staffing. So our E&L staffing is down 1.2 as far as from the FTE perspective. But as far as our program, we're still meeting the needs of all of our students, both in the co-taught model of our E&L program and also in our standalone program as well. So in summary, looking at our elementary staffing, we do, again, I mentioned a total of 4.0 reduction in elementary. If you add that to a reduction of FTE of 3.2 from our specials and our supports, at this point from our elementary side, we're looking at a 7.2 reduction in FTE at the elementary side. Obviously, these are not easy numbers to go through. You know, and I do want to thank our administrative team and our cabinet. A lot of work has gone into putting all this together. It's been a difficult kind of yeoman's task to be able to put this together. But I do want to thank our administrators for their feedback and constant communication in arriving at these numbers. So as we look at our secondary staffing, it's for us, we want to first start looking at our enrollment. And a couple things I want to point out from the middle school side. So first of all, ironically, as of right now, it looks like we're completely flat on our Bellport Middle School enrollment. However, there is a bit of an anomaly there, looking at our sixth grade. And we're down about 50 students for next year in sixth grade. And I do want to kind of highlight that because it does have an implication. I know we're talking about secondary, but really our sixth grade enrollment will have an adverse effect on our elementary staffing because our sixth grade teachers are really elementary school teachers and are typically either tenured or probationary in the elementary track. So technically, any reductions in that sixth grade area would really live on the elementary side of FTE, even though those teachers kind of live on the secondary world as part of our middle school. The only other thing I wanted to mention here is we do have a reduction of 107 students looking at our high school for next year, but it's a little different. And due to kind of student course requests and new courses, the overall decline of high school enrollment does not have the same proportional impact on staffing. And what I mean by that, there's really a direct correlation, like if you look at sixth grade with the number of students that decrease connected with FTE. At the high school, it's a little bit different because students have so many different choices of courses that they can take at the high school. So there is an impact, but it's not as direct as that you'll see as we go through our sixth grade staffing. So we'll start by talking about our Bellport Middle School, looking at our, again, core academics and electives. Again, there's a lot to kind of process and take in on this table. So I'll kind of start with just kind of mentioning that the overall enrollment at the middle school is static for this year over year. But as I previously mentioned, there has been a reduction of almost 200 students over the last 10 years. And during that time, we basically have maintained our staffing. Unfortunately, at this point, this year, we are looking to make some reductions in staffing here at the middle school as well. And I will start with that highlighted yellow. So that's definitely a direct result of our decrease in enrollment in sixth grade. So we're looking to decrease our FTE in sixth grade, which again, as I mentioned, is really more of an elementary FTE by 2.1 FTE. It's also a reduction of 1.8 in English language arts and 1.0 in social studies. I'm not going to go through and read the whole table, but as you can see, there's basically reduction in just about every single area of core academics and electives. And that was something intentional as we started here. We really wanted to kind of cast a wide net and to see where our reductions were going to be. And based on our request and where we are, we ended up with a pretty diverse group of area where we ended up making reductions. So again, at the middle school in academics and electives, we have a reduction right now of 7.35 FTE. And that does not include our second part of the middle school and looking at our specials and support. So I would kind of draw your attention down to the lower right-hand corner where it says specials and support subtotals. So we anticipate being down 1.6 FTE at the middle school, and that's inclusive of the reductions in special education, E&L, and reading. So if you take the 1.6 reduction and add it to our previous slide of 7.35 reduction, at the middle school only, we're looking at a reduction of 8.95 FTE. And I will say that despite our proposed staffing reductions, there will be little to no impact on existing middle school programs. So we're still able to offer very similar programs, but just in a little bit of a different capacity. Again, as we look to our final part here as far as our buildings, looking at our high school, again, it's a lot to process. Take a minute to look at that table, and while you do that, I just want to remind of what I mentioned before about due to student course requests and new courses, the overall decline in high school enrollment does not have the same proportional impact that we saw, for example, in our sixth grade staffing, where it doesn't necessarily affect one particular area in a dramatic way, but as you can see, based on our reductions, it does still have an impact. So just to highlight a couple key areas, obviously a reduction of 1.4 in mathematics, a reduction of 0.9 in science, and a reduction of 1.0 in health and physical education. Again, in total, at the high school, a reduction of 4.3 FTE. in looking at the academic and elective area of the high school. The last facet of that would just be at the high school, looking at our specialists and supports. And similar to our middle school page, I'd ask you to look at the lower right-hand corner, looking at our specials and support subtotals. And at this point, we're down, we would be looking at a reduction of 2.2 FTE. And again, that would be inclusive of reductions in special education and also in reading. It does include an increase of 0.4 in E&L to meet some of the mandates that we need to meet for our levels up at the high school. So if you take our 2.2 reduction that's indicated on this page and add it to our previous slide, you're looking at, for the high school staffing, a reduction of 6.5 FTE. So again, the fourth facet was really looking at secondary schools. So this page kind of brings it all together from the secondary perspective. So again, we're looking at an 8.95 at the middle school, 6.5 at the high school, for a total reduction on the secondary side of 15.5 FTE. The only other thing that, again, I want to just remind everybody that 15.5, 2.1 of that is really, it really kind of lives more on the elementary side, because those sixth grade teachers are technically elementary school teachers. You know, despite all these proposed staffing reductions, we really don't see, we really see little to no impact on our existing middle school and high school programs. Additionally, we will be running some new courses at Belport High School, including AP Psych, AP African American History, Real World Communication and Writing Skills, Anatomy and Physiology, Natural Disasters and Climate Change, and also the Science of Well-Being. So, you know, despite some of these difficult decisions we're having to make, I do want to kind of highlight that we are still continuing to reinvigorate and revise our courses that our secondary students are able to take and pursue. So our last piece that we wanted to look at was our non-instructional. And at this point, just a reminder, our athletic coaches and club advisors are not considered FTEs and are not part of this presentation. At this point, our non-instructional staff reductions are still possible. At this point, we have this flat, but they are still possible depending on our close examination of our needs as we continue throughout the rest of this spring. So that's the fifth pillar in our presentation here tonight, was the non-instructional piece. And so finally, kind of putting it all together, looking at a 3.0 reduction from the administrative and support, a 7.2 reduction of FTE on the elementary staffing, a 15.5 reduction of the secondary staff would give us a total of 25.65 in total for total FTE reduction across our K-12 program. Obviously, these projections may change as the budgetary process continues. We'll continue to assess our overall budget and share the impact of those projections on the budget and provide an update in May. I will just kind of end this portion of the presentation just with saying there's a lot of work that went into putting this together, and this is really just looking at it from an FTE perspective. That's why I started this presentation by defining FTE, because that's really what this night is about. Our next steps would be going from FTE to actual our human impact of who this would impact, and in our work at the cabinet and the district level, and certainly through HR, will be to work with our collective bargaining units to talk about timeline of when we would communicate that to our potentially affected staff members. So with that, I know it's a difficult presentation, and I was not necessarily looking forward to this, having to share this current state of affairs, but this is where we are. So I would be open to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, appreciate the presentation. We'll go around the room, I'm sure there's plenty of questions. I'll start on my left, anybody?
Yeah, I'll start. So we're talking about staff reduction directly related to declining enrollment. And then you also you also spoke about healthcare costs having a 15% increase. The reduction in staff has nothing to do with the health insurance increase, correct? The health insurance increase, maybe this goes to Mrs. Santana.
Yeah.
No, that accelerated the process. So both are true. So the idea of reducing the staff based on enrollment was a sort of a long-term plan that we were going to hope to accomplish through attrition, through retirements. The healthcare costs, the transportation costs, and the special education cost is what exacerbated the whole decision-making process and made it a necessity to do it this year. Otherwise, we would maintain our staff, and again, as people retire, we, in talking with, some of the collective bargaining units, we anticipated numerous retirements next year, and a handful this year, and the subsequent year, where we would write in the numbers, but in a more slow and deliberate manner than sort of ripping the Band-Aid off like we're doing.
Because all of those, it was like the perfect storm.
Oh, yeah. And we're already contending with the disparity in building aid. So with that, we sort of anticipated, and our projections are pretty accurate when we came to that, but it was impossible to predict these costs. It's impossible, and that's why so many districts are facing these challenges in this budget season.
In relation to the insurance costs, you mentioned the 3 districts that are in the consortium, Ward Melville and Smithtown. Is this specific insurance plan through this consortium that is has that gone up disproportionately to other plans? Like, is this, and I know, like, if we talked about pulling out of the consortium, it falls apart, but, like, is this the time to get seriously discuss leaving the consortium? Is there a better plan, a cheaper that?
So right now, the consortium is looking at different healthcare providers. Right now, we use United Healthcare, so that's in the works with their executive board. I think people are frankly afraid to talk about pulling out, because if any one district pulls out, it kind of dissolves the.
I get it, but like, it doesn't matter, right? I'm concerned about us and what we're doing, so the question remains, does leaving the consortium for a new plan, are we looking at that, or did this just kind of hit us and all of a sudden, now we're not thinking about it, right? Should we have been thinking about that along the line, and are we thinking about it for the future if it saves costs?
So, it's a hard question to answer, because I don't think anybody anticipated dissolving the consortium. And so, basically, we anticipated slow increments, because, our healthcare costs were somewhat smaller than like night shift, for example. But I think, and what it is, and this is not scientifically proven, but basically the narrative is, with the advent of all these medications, Ozempic, that's really skyrocketing costs for the insurance companies. And so because more people are living longer and requiring more medical needs, it's increasing the costs. So now they're kind of catching up to night shift.
My wife works in Smithtown, so I'm on the same plan as everybody in South Country, so I get it. And I've watched it change over the years significantly. The things you have to fight for, the medications. I have a son who's diabetic, so I get it. But again, the question is, and what I'd like to know, and if you don't have it now, is, are we hearing similar stories on increased insurance costs from districts outside of the 3 in this consortium? And if the answer is no, I'd like to make sure we're understanding why that's the case and what is the benefit to staying, because the threat of it collapsing at the stake of our staff and our district paying more money isn't really my concern. It shouldn't be our concern.
We're kind of catching up. So there's market increases in night shift in prior years, last couple of years. So I basically think that they're sort of catching up to those.
So basically what you're saying is that our healthcare premiums are still lower than night shift.
Yeah, but we're getting to the point where
It's catching up, and that's what these increases are. So, and is that a guess, or that we know that?
No, we know that.
Okay.
Consortium protected it, basically, for a little while.
Well, that's what it was there for, and then as districts kept dropping out, there seems to be a significant drop in 6th grade enrollment. Is there a reason attributed to that?
It's the class moving up. All the classes.
No, I get that, but why is it? Oh, so you're not comparing, that's not,
So in other words, our current 5th grade.
that's not cohort to cohort.
No. So basically, our current 5th grade that's moving up to 6th grade is a lot smaller. Really, and another thing to bring up is the high school. Each year, we're gonna lose about 100 kids, or close to 100 kids. If you look at the high school classes for the next year, 10, 11, and 12 are a little over 300. I think they're 340. And every year, every grade lower than that, 9th grade, 8th grade, 7th grade, is in the mid-200s. So eventually, the high school enrollment is gonna drop by a little over 300 students.
And then the last one I have, at least for now, is there, on slide 23, and you talked about, wait a minute, I might have the wrong slide. 22, excuse me. In the electives and the core academics, right, you have each one of these areas, except for math, is less than 1 FTE that's being reduced. how do we fill those positions based on certification at the high school? Like, so is this in addition to the number of teachers that we're reducing staff by? Is there another population of teachers that are going from 1 FTE to 0.9, 0.8, or whatever?
The 25.6 encompasses all of this. In some cases, there are teachers who have overages. We have teachers who are also like 1.1s or 1.2s.
Okay,
So it's hard to answer the question specifically, but for some people, we consider someone who's excess, someone who goes from 1.0 to 0.8. That's considered an excess to us. There's gonna be a handful of people in that category, but some of this is also absorbed. So when you look at the number, it's 25.6, it's not 25.6 bodies. That number's gonna round out to about 23 people.
got it, that's what I was getting at. So, yeah, so some people are gonna go from 1 to maybe a 0.8 or something like that,
So
so,
1.2 to 1.0.
got it, okay. That was all I had for that round. Did anybody else have? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huntsman, and so that brings me to the next part of our.
Did you have anything in? I was gonna ask another question if.
Yeah, I just put it out there, so if you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so, I mean, there's so many things we spend money on. Did we look at absolutely everything to make sure that we have tightened our belts?
So we have, and we're continuing to look. So again, this process is ongoing. If we could sort of salvage any positions, that's our mission.
Because
So,
that's why, with respect, and, I'm sorry I got a little hot under the collar about the treasurer's report. I meant no disrespect to you. But that's why it's so important that when we get these reports, we have time to go through them. And we meet with the Assistant Superintendent of Business
Right.
to go over these reports. And that's why it's so important that we fully understand where we're spending our money and where we can spend money, where we can save money in equipment. There's a lot of things and a lot of ways that we can tighten our belt. So are we doing that? What are we looking at? Toward the overall report is what, 25.65? Is that the final subtotal?
Correct.
Do I have the right slide up?
You have
Yes.
to remember that our current budget is $143 million. We suspected with, about a 3% increase, that would increase about 145, 146, which is what we sort of anticipated. That's kind of typical. But we're looking at, right now, expenditures in the 150 plus, just based on projections. So that's where we have to make these hard decisions, because we have to bring it back down to that 145 number about it.
And we have a community that's used to the way this district is run, and they're used to the way
Right.
the class size are, and they're used to the teachers that they have.
Right.
And they want to see things remain the same.
No, it's terrible, and it's, class sizes, we're still gonna be healthy class sizes. If you looked at the average for elementary school, they're capped at 22, which is still pretty healthy. It's not what we've had. But yeah, these decisions are really difficult. And so, over the next couple of weeks, we're still gonna be looking at our other budget line items to see where else we can sort of make cuts, but we still have to operate the district. And, when transportation costs are surpassing 10% of your operating budget, it presents problems, as well as the healthcare. Those are the two most impactful things that happen in this.
Even some of the discussions we've had in Finance and Facility Committee, we talk about equipment, say, for example, in the kitchens. Instead of fixing old equipment, it's better off to buy new.
That leads into my next slide.
Is that the best? Oh, that's another slide?
About capital improvements, yeah.
Okay. Tonight?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, just specifically about equipment.
With our capital improvement vote that we're gonna propose, yes. But that's what I'm saying, it's like, there's just so much, this is a heavy hit tonight.
Very hefty.
And so that's why we can leave no stone unturned.
But it's also important, because like the capital line capital reserve can't help us
No.
No.
in that regard.
None of the
So,
reserves can help us in this regard, so that's another, you can only
No,
use
but what I was referring to is in the overall
spending money
budget, however.
on equipment versus replacing it.
yeah, I get it. I'm just-
Can I ask my question now?
You sure?
Oh, I didn't know you had, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Floor.
It's actually, I wanted to ask the question
Just
you
standard.
had started out with, but ask it in a little different way. If you put aside the money completely and you look only at the number of educators that we need to continue the programs that we have in place, and to include the new ones at the high school that have been
Courses.
figured into this. The number of staff members would be the number that you're showing today, even if money was no issue.
Correct, we could still maintain our programs with our proposal today, but again, the strategy was to sort of get to this point in a more gradual way, so not to impact people's lives.
And then when we get into the capital work, I have a question there too.
Okay, great.
So just to bring up reserves, so, school districts have the ability to use capital reserves to offset costs, but you have to use them for their specific purpose. So if we have a capital reserve for TRS, we can't use more than our TRS bill. So for example, if our TRS bill for a given school year is $3 million, we can only use $3 million of that reserve to offset that cost. So reserves aren't just funds that we have at our disposal. They're assigned to very specific purposes. So same with the capital, our capital reserve, which I'm going to get to the next slide, because we're still committed to making capital improvements. So which is, to me, it's I don't know what the right word is. It's not ironic, but it's we're talking about being in financial crisis, but we still have money in our capital reserve that we can use to continually make these capital improvements that our buildings need. As Trustee Felice alluded to, we've been repairing and repairing. At a certain point, it doesn't become cost effective to continue repairing. So to give you an update of where we're at with capital projects, our high school turf field, which was voted on in October of 2022, was completed pretty expeditiously the fall of 2023. We also had the magnetic locking mechanism replacements that was completed this fall and winter, mostly in the fall. Right now, we're doing our camera replacements, which were again voted on in October of 2022. That's ongoing, and we're hoping to finish that in spring 2025. The window replacements at Vern W. Critz, we're finally going to be breaking ground this coming summer on that project, as well as the vestibule at the South Haven Pre-K Center. That's the what we call the man trap. I hate that term. It's the vestibule. Currently, South Haven doesn't have one. The replacement of the oil tanks at Brookhaven Elementary and South Haven are scheduled for summer 2026. Right now, they're going through the approval process. The high school auditorium, we expedited. We're hoping to break deck ground this summer and complete by the fall of 2025. We did have some sample chairs here that were removed, but we already put in the order for the chairs, so that we're really accelerating that process. And our engineering performance contract, which amounts to about $10 million, is also working at an accelerated pace. So we're looking to break ground on that summer of 2025. All these things are approved in a budget neutral way. What we're going to be proposing, because we don't have a transfer to capital line in our budget, is another proposition to use capital reserves in the amount of $2.3 million, or a little over $2.3 million. This is aidable projects. So we received 76% aid back on these projects upon completion. And I need to note that aid is spread over 15 years. But the idea is to keep generating aid by engaging in capital projects. So what we included in this capital reserve proposition is about a little over $1.3 million to replace our track surface at the high school. Right now the track is pretty dilapidated. It's also not built to the specs required to host invitationals and bring other schools in. But it's getting close to becoming a safety hazard. So it's not that we're just focusing on athletics, it's something that just needs to happen for safety reasons as well. And this includes the resurfacing of the areas, drainage upgrades to prevent flooding, which leads to other costs, and the replacement of the visitors' bleachers, which are also pretty dilapidated at our current campus. The $175,000 for the removal and replacement of the gymnasium windows at Belport High School. Every time it rains, water leaks into the gymnasium, causing damage, which is additional costs. So we want to remedy that. And finally, the part that's not so aesthetically pleasing and people won't see is a replacement of 2 boilers at the high school at a cost of about $800,000. The saving grace in this is that these boilers are consistently in need of repair, so it's becoming not cost effective to repair them. But by replacing these two boilers, we can salvage the parts and use those parts for future boiler repairs for remaining boilers. So that's kind of the plan. And the boilers that we replace them with will be more energy efficient and thus reducing costs. So again, provided we have a successful budget vote, I do want to start the conversation, as we alluded to, about some bond work, because bond work is necessary. Our buildings need it. It's been almost 20 years since we've had any substantial capital work done in our school district, aside from what I shared, which is all just for the last 2 years. But yeah, and it also generates aid. And the idea is to continually engage in capital improvement projects in sort of increments so that you're always getting building aid as a source of revenue. So I don't know if there's any questions about the proposition for capital reserve vote.
Ms. Hayes?
I do have a question. With regard to the track, it's my understanding from what you said that the current track is not wide enough to host the championship events. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the new track that we got in 2008 wasn't built to enable us to do that. And this proposed capital improvement will enable us to have a wider track so we can host events.
That's correct.
Okay, so to be really picky about the language, and really picky about the language in the proposition, it's not just replacement of the track surface, because it's too narrow.
Right.
It's actually making the track be appropriate for complete use. So is there somebody with expertise in drafting the work, like maybe your facilities
Yeah, we can
people,
certainly,
get somebody to look at it and try to fix that language a little bit so that
Will do.
it's not just resurfacing the inadequate area that we currently have?
So I believe this is up for
Replacing the
vote.
track.
That's not what it says.
I know, but that's
But
what I'm
this
saying,
is,
just
Ms. Hayes,
suggesting.
this is up for
Okay.
vote at tonight's
I'm sorry,
meeting.
it's up for a vote tonight.
Correct.
It can't be changed without delaying it.
But guaranteed replacing the track means replacing it to specs. It's, there's no,
It doesn't say replacing the track, it said the track surface.
right, with a new track surface.
It says replacement of the running track surface.
Does,
Do we
does,
think it's not gonna pass the?
so from, right, so no, but from here, because I agree, it's inexact language. But if we vote on and approve this tonight, does this not go to the state with plans
Correct.
attached?
Yeah, once this is approved,
So we're
well-
not gonna get denied by the state for our aid reimbursements because the language was inartful, because the plans are going to show a wider track surface. Can
I
you-
mean, we are.
The issue isn't, I'm sorry, the issue isn't state approval, the issue is
Okay.
voter notice,
Oh, then forgive me.
notification,
Okay.
so yeah,
Okay.
I didn't understand it either until the
Okay.
council.
So
I
it's for,
apologize.
it's for voter notice, so I think the voters need to know we're getting the track we thought we got back in 2008.
We certainly put
I
that in our
feel-
budget newsletter.
Yeah, I really feel confident that, but nobody's really gonna split hairs on this, that's my opinion.
Well,
Does
I
the board
already
disagree with
did.
me? That's one, right? There's 6 of us. Does anybody think this is a major issue in this language that it's not gonna pass the vote?
Well, we have an opportunity in the,
In all the literature to explain it.
right, right.
Okay.
And our hope is to host these invitations. So this is, yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about the specificity of the language, but we want to get a track that meets the specs to host invitationals and to host all the events.
Can we modify the proposal before we vote on it?
So my understanding, yes, the answer is yes, if you wish to do so. My understanding, though, is that this language came out of the business office in consultation with your architects. So the description is from the architects, right?
Correct.
And they're well-suited to determine the nature of the project, I think.
I can assure you, it's not hidden language to repeat what we've done before. But we're resurfacing, I mean, literally, we're resurfacing the track.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. Did you, item 3 is the vote, right? Just, there's no discussion on that? Right? The legal notice for the district elections?
Yeah.
That was item 3?
We have to approve the proposition first, and then.
Then, okay, so we're gonna do the proposition, is that gonna be a roll call vote separately, or what does that, doesn't have to be a roll call?
Can it be
right?
budget? Can you
For the-
approve
For the proposition, for the,
F2 and F3?
F2. But, so we gotta do 1 and 2, and then 3 has to be separate, is what you're saying?
Well, we
One is
vote
No,
on
one
the
is-
proposition
One is
first.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Just two.
We have to do 2 and
We
3
have to approve
separately.
2 before we approve 3, is
Yes.
what you're
Correct, that's, I
saying.
just wanna make sure I understand. Okay, so you got that, you're gonna do 2
Yep.
and 3 separately.
Alright. So the administration recommends approval of F2, capital reserve expenditure proposition, annual budget vote, and election.
F2, can I have a motion? Mr. Barry, seconded by Mr. Lullo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Item 3.
The administration recommends approval of item F3, legal notice, annual district meeting, and election.
Can I have a motion? Ms. Felice, seconded by Ms. Kavanaugh. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Does the board, I'm
That's for
sorry?
option 2 with the proposition. That's the
Yes.
one. Thank you.
Yes.
Got it. Does the board have an objection to me doing G, H, and I together?
No objection.
Alright, so the administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in G1 through G3, personnel agenda items reflected in H1 through H8, and business agenda items reflected in schedules I1 through I7.
Can I have a motion? Ms. Kavanaugh, seconded by Mr. Barry. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Any cards for commentary? No? Any closing remarks? No? Motion to adjourn? Ms. Kavanaugh, seconded by Mr. Lillo. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice night.
Thank you.